All right, speaking of war being a total failure of humanity, we have found out in the last hour or so that Iran have unveiled a hypersonic missile. And as I mentioned before, the reason that this actually matters is because this is a potential flashpoint for World War III. I really believe we're already in World War III in some way, shape or form in Europe because we're all being sucked into that. Remember, World War II started in 1939 and nothing really happened well, it actually started in 1938. When the Germans invaded a couple of different countries. They went to Austria, Czechoslovakia, and different places like that, and it eventually started into a shooting war with the Polish, and then off it went. So it went on for quite a while. So this has been only going on for, the better part of 18 months. It might go for another 6 months before NATO actually get pulled in. And the Ukrainians are throwing their toys and getting upset, saying that we want a NATO security guarantee. We understand we can't be in NATO, but we want a security guarantee. Which means, okay, if you're now in the security guarantee, we're going to bring our Air Force in and we're going to start, NATO versus Russia, off we go. So now that could be the escalation into World War III. But there's other potential flashpoints as well, folks. There's the China-Taiwan, there's North Korea, South Korea, and that's a giant ruse, that little circle there in that part of the world where the Chinese go, hey, Kim, time to invade, go. They go and invade there, draw Americans, the Quad, and everybody into that fight there between North and South Korea, which would only be a very short conflict, and then the Chinese are going to invade Taiwan, and we can't fight a war on three fronts. And then on top of all of that, the axis of the new George Bush axis of evil, which is Iran, Russia, North Korea, and China, we're giving the Chinese the Chinese are giving the Iranians all of the missile technology in exchange for the oil. So here we are on the precipice of these hypersonic missiles. So I want to show you a couple of photos of the thing first, and then I'll show you the video that they put out, which is pretty interesting. So they had a slick presentation that they put out there, and here's a couple of screen grabs from that presentation. So the missile in the background is the complete thing with the launch vehicle. In the foreground here, you can see the re-entry vehicle that contains the warhead. And in the foreground you've got this little round thing that looks like a spacecraft type device. That's what's sitting in the back of the re-entry vehicle. And you'll see in the video in a second exactly why they're showing you that, because this thing is maneuverable. That's what they're showing to you there. So here's another kind of clearer close-up picture that's sitting inside of it there. There's no secrets here, folks. Everybody knows how this technology works. We know what's going on with it. The thing that I kind of look at with this is, why don't we have hypersonic missiles? And I look at that and I think the reason for that, the only conclusive reason for that, is because we chose stealth. We chose stealth over hypersonic. Yeah. And the reason for that is because just because you can get something to go more than 5 times the speed of sound doesn't necessarily mean it's actually going to get through the enemy's air defenses. Because if they can figure out a way to counter your hypersonic threat, then all that effort going to that effort is not really going to make a difference. So what we've decided to do with our weapon systems is to go after stealth. So you got long-range anti-surface or anti-ship missiles, LRASM, RASM, JASM, and the different air launch platforms that we actually have use stealth technology to penetrate the enemy's air defenses. Russia, China, and Iran we now know, are using hypersonic technology to try and penetrate our air defenses. And the idea is that these things follow a ballistic trajectory, but what they don't do is they don't go all the way outside of the atmosphere like an ICBM does. So think of a rocket. When a rocket goes, if you ever watch a SpaceX launch to try and get into orbit, in order to get into orbit, you need to get to 27,500 kilometers an hour to get out of the Earth's atmosphere, to get into orbit to be able to do that. That's why space is so hard, right, to be able to do that. That's why the rockets have different stages to do that. Stage 1 that comes back to Earth, and then stage 2 keeps going, gets them into orbit. But it only takes a couple of minutes to get into orbit. It just takes like 2.5 to 3 minutes to get into actual orbit itself. So an ICBM gets into orbit and then follows the trajectory over planet Earth and then re-enters the atmosphere. Now, the reason that is such a bad thing is because it's coming back into the atmosphere at 25 times the speed of sound. And if we're going to engage with that, we need to hit a bullet with a bullet, essentially. But if you're trying to hit a bullet that's maneuvering, that can maneuver as it's coming in, there's no way that you can actually do that. But what we've seen in the last couple of months, really, is that the Russian Kinzhal missiles fired from a MiG-31, they fire up into the atmosphere and then they come down in a trajectory. and they're coming down in a ballistic trajectory, but they're only coming back not as fast as what they say. It's said that they're flying from one side of Russia to the other and testing at about 10 times the speed of sound. But as they're coming back into the ballistic trajectory, coming back down to hit their target, they're not traveling at 10 times the speed of sound. And when you see the video that I'm about to show you, you'll see that this Iranian missile is not traveling at 10 times the speed of sound when it hits the target either. And look, you can just tell that it's not, because you can actually see the missile. If it was going 10 times the speed of sound as it's coming back in, you wouldn't see it. It'd just be like a streak in the sky and hit the target. But when you watch the video, I can't really tell if it's slowed down. Even if it's slowed down at 60 frames a second and somebody's created the slow motion video of what's going on and sped it up to make it look like that, it's still not traveling at a ballistic re-entry trajectory, which means if that's the case, it can still be engaged, maneuvering or not. So that's the failure of this hypersonic technology, is that even if it is maneuvering on re-entry, our radar systems and our missile systems are sophisticated enough to hit a moving target. And it's been done before. We've done it with aircraft, we've done it with re-entry vehicles, we've shot down our own ICBMs before, it's all been proven. So I think all of this hypersonic technology is like all for naught, really. You know, sure, the missiles travel really fast, they go a long way really quickly and you can get in there, but in order for you to engage with the target, you need to saturate a target with it. Wouldn't it be better to send less assets and just sneak your way in there? They can't see you. That's the choice we've made, right? You know, it always comes down to two things in the world. It doesn't matter what it is, if it's VHS or Beta, if it's Apple or it's iPhone, there's, you know, if it's Ford or General Motors, there's like always two choices that you got to pick, and we've gone for hypersonic or stealth. We picked stealth, they went with hypersonics, and I think that that's a categorical mistake. So let's take a look at the video. I'm going to pull the sound down on the video because it's a bit annoying, but I'll let that play and I'll talk to you about it as it's actually playing as well, but I'll just pull the sound back on that a bit. So their animation leaves a little bit to be desired, I think. Regular missile launch, you can't even tell if that's actually it. I assume that's it. Sure looks like the fins on the rocket that you see in the pictures. See how it's not going straight up, it's following a trajectory. So the reason that these hypersonic missiles don't fire straight up like that, like a ballistic missile, is because the idea of the hypersonic is it doesn't go outside of the atmosphere, it skims across the top of the atmosphere. And as it's skimming across the top of the atmosphere, so our space-based infrared looks down and it can see the missile launch, but then it can't track it because it's skimming across the top of the atmosphere. It's not following an arc that you would otherwise predict. So it makes them really faint and really hard to see. So we know the Chinese missile technology does that, the North Korean stuff as well, and now we know the Iranian does as well. That's how we know that they're all sharing the same tech. Yeah, there it is. It's just muted. So there's a little bit of footage there, Ed. Tell me if you think, do you think that that's actually real in space there? The quality's a bit shit.
No, that's graphics. That's what do you call it?
Are you sure? I look closely at it, man. I actually think it might be the footage where they're, looks like they're in the very top of the atmosphere at a couple of 100,000 feet there. It looks like they're in space. See?
Mm.
And then you find this really shitty animation here from Looney Tunes in the 1960s or something. But they do a good job kind of showing you what it's doing, right? And so here's the engine technology. So in the picture, we saw the little round ball with the engine on it. So it's showing you here that it can maneuver left and right. Now it's showing you can maneuver up and down. And, you know, the speeds that it's traveling at, it doesn't have to go very fast to actually do that. So the re-entry vehicle, again, showing you that it can fly the S-curve like that. And unless it's coming in at 25 times the speed of sound, who gives a shit? And then it's showing up and down as well. We can still hit that. There's different, remember there's different, in Patriot systems, there's PAC 2 and PAC 3. PAC 2 is a direct kinetic hit. PAC 3 is something that's actually proximity hit. So we can still hit it.
No, this reminds me in like a football game where a guy catches the ball. And
that's what I thought too.
and there's nobody around him, but he's doing the zigzag anyway. And like, why do you think there's no one around you?
Exactly right. It's like strange. So it's all funny until you see this last bit, right? Here's the re-entry is what they're showing. And it's still, according to the re-entry, it's still showing it. Kaboom. So let me just show you the end of that again so you can watch that again, because I think it's pretty important. So even if this thing, I'll just pause it there, even if this thing is traveling at 5 times the speed of sound, it would be going much faster than what it's showing here. So when it hits the actual target, it looks like the splash is in real time. It doesn't look like that's actually in slow motion. So when I look at this, when I'm eyeballing it, I don't know, I can't see, but just looking at this stuff for my entire life, it's not going at a hypersonic speed. If it was going at a hypersonic speed, you wouldn't see the bloody thing. It's traveling, hypersonic means above 5 times the speed of sound. But this thing doesn't look like it's going 5 times the speed of sound. It looks like it's like a regular cruise missile type speed at 400 knots. See, that splash, man, is definitely not. That's not slowed down, because watch the blast wave as it kind of moves out. That's not slowed down at all. See? But it's deadly accurate, huh? Whatever they're aiming at, whatever that target is on the ground.
We'll assume it's accurate. So is this out of Iran, you said?
Yeah.
Okay. So to me, this looks like a video invitation to Israel to come bomb us.
The Israelis like, whatever, man, you've got that. We've got something better for you.